Hey friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, back with another video this week. I thought I'd do something a little different now that the pantry challenge is over, and I thought I'd just kind of take you along on our week and kind of show you some of the other things we do besides kitchen work. This week the weather has been below freezing at night, so it's still a little cold when we're doing our morning chores, and it's getting above freezing during the day. We've had some lovely days with great weather, so we've been taking advantage of that. Here I thought I'd answer, we usually get questions about what this is. This is a bison pump. It is a manual well pump. We have a well that we dug back by our barn, and this is what we use to water our animals in the winter when it dips below freezing, because otherwise you have to deal with hoses freezing up and the spigot attached to the house freezing up. So this well pump is just such a blessing. It's called a bison pump, and it's made by a company out of Maine. So it is made to withstand below freezing temperatures, and it has never frozen up on us. So if you're looking for a manual pump, I can't recommend it enough. So every day we have to water and feed all the animals. If you're new here, we raise chickens and ducks for eggs and meat. We also raise our own beef. We have 2 beehives that we raise for honey. And then, of course, we have gardens to raise our fruits and vegetables. And so every morning, the boys help me. They do the majority of the outdoor animal chores, and I really couldn't do it without them because, as you guys know, Adam works off the homestead during the week, and I couldn't do all of these animal chores and take care of the little ones and do everything else that I need to do without the big boys' help. So they are definitely a blessing to our family. So as I mentioned, the weather is changing, and because of the below freezing temperatures during the night and the above freezing temperatures during the day, it is the perfect weather for maple syrup season. And we've been doing this for about 6 years now, I think. We have maybe 15 maple trees on our property, a combination of sugar maples and red maples, and we tap not all of the trees every year, and we don't tap enough trees for our yearly maple syrup needs, but we just do it for fun and as a learning experience for the children. We really enjoy it, so we just collect some, boil it down, just do it, and so that it's not a huge hassle and it's just something fun that we can do. You don't need a lot of equipment to tap your maple trees. We use a 7/16 inch drill bit, and you basically just drill into the tree about an inch in, and you do it at somewhat of an angle. He's showing you the drill bit, and then I'm showing you about how far in that will go with that. And so you just drill in at an upward angle like this. And then we purchased most of our maple syruping gear from Amazon. We have little plastic spiles that you stick into the hole and some plastic tubing. There are all different setups that you can use. You can use buckets, bags, all sorts of things. But once we drill the hole, we just tap the little plastic spile with a rubber mallet into the hole and run the tubing down. And our tubing, we use big 5-gallon plastic water jugs, and this works perfectly for us. We like them because there's a handle on them, and so when you start filling the plastic jug, the handle comes in handy because you can run a bungee cord around the tree and loop it through that handle, and that secures it to the tree and keeps it from falling over as the bucket begins to fill and gets kind of heavy. So as I mentioned, this is purely a hobby for us. This is purely for the kids' education. It's a project that I basically let them handle. We've been doing it long enough that the boys do this all on their own, and they're responsible for checking on the sap every day and collecting it, and we keep the extra sap in our overflow fridge. So as you can see, the sap is running. With the temperature fluctuations being kind of wacky this week, we didn't gather a lot of sap, but we'll just store it in the fridge, and then I'll share with you next week as we boil it down how that process goes. But just wanted to show you how we tap the trees in case that's something you wanted to do this year. It's really easy and it's so much fun. Our family really enjoys this. Now let's get back inside and I'll show you what I'm up to in the kitchen today. It's a Monday, which means it's a project day, and I decided to tackle some of the gallon bags of Concord grapes that I have in my freezer. At the end of canning season last year, I ran out of steam, and so I just started filling some freezer bags, and now is the time for me to handle those. So I just simply pour the frozen grapes into a pot and fill with water and let it simmer to make a juice. And then I strain out the grapes and I have my juice. I can do anything with these, but today I'm going to turn them into grape jelly. And I have done a video on my process for canning grape jelly before, and I'll link that in the description. That isn't the point of sharing this today. Today I wanted to talk about my project days. As I mentioned, it's a Monday, and so this is the day out of the week that I accomplish any big project that I need to get. So I sort of compartmentalize my life into several categories. I have kitchen work that I need to do that would include big canning projects. I have homemaking work, projects around the house that I need to do to clean and organize. There's homesteading work, which would be big things I need to do outside, working in the garden, planting trees, things like that. There's homeschool work, big organizing projects, filling out kids' planners, and other things like that. And then there's other random miscellaneous work. So it's really hard for me in any given day to accomplish things in all of those categories. It's actually impossible for me to do it all. And so what I have to do is kind of structure my week in a way that allows different days to be for different categories. So typically, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are our heavy school days. Those are the days that we really hit the books. Of course, we do other schoolwork on Mondays and Fridays, but the days where I sit down and do big group work projects and things with the kids are Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But Fridays are the day that I attack big housekeeping projects. It's the day before the weekend when I know Adam's going to be home, so it's the perfect time for us to get the whole house organized and cleaned and do things like that so that we can enjoy a tidy house when Adam's home and we're all together over the weekend. So then that leaves Monday as my big project day in the other areas. So in the winter and early spring, when it's too cold for me to get outside and really work on the homestead, I stick to tackling kitchen projects on Mondays. Once the weather turns and I need to get out in the garden and really do work outside, that's what Monday is for. Monday is for the big homesteading work outdoors. So typically we wake about 6:30 in the morning, and by 7 o'clock lately the kids have been up. I'm working on breakfast. We eat, we get the kitchen cleaned up, and then we start working on our morning chores. The boys go outside and do the farm chores, and the girls work on the chores inside with me. We get all the little boys dressed and ready. Everybody else gets dressed and ready for the day. And then by 9 o'clock, pretty much all of that is done. And then from the hours of 9 until noon, that is the time that I have to accomplish whatever project that day is categorized for. I know it sounds kind of crazy to have your day broken down that specifically and to have your weeks that specifically designated, have the days designated like that, but I wear a lot of hats. I have a lot of things that I need to get done in a week, and the only way that everything will get done is if I try to stay organized and I keep my days pretty structured. So on this day, like I mentioned, I'm working on this grape jelly. You might be saying, that's a whole lot of grape jelly. What are you going to do with all of that? But we, once again, are a dairy-free family. When we have things like bread and rolls, we can't put butter on it. My kids instead typically put jelly on it. So I can never have enough jelly in the house. We will use it if I can. Jelly also makes a wonderful gift if someone's just stopping by or I'm going to visit someone and I want to put together a little gift basket, maybe bake them some bread, throw in a little jar of home canned jelly. It's just the perfect little gift. So you really can never can enough jelly. You guys know I typically raw pack a lot of my canning, but jelly is something that goes into the canner boiling hot. So you can see that I already have my canning water boiling on the stove. That's something you always need to remember. The temperature of the water in your canner always needs to match the temperature of the contents of your canning jars, or else you're going to deal with cracked jars. And the point of having Benji on my back while I was working was to make sure that he falls asleep for his nap. As you can see, his neck is back and that's looking terribly uncomfortable. So I'm trying to hunch over and finish up really quickly. I was also working on some granola while I was canning. And just as soon as I get this back in the oven, I'm going to try to transfer Benji into the bed and let him get a nice long nap while I go get some other things done. Typically, during nap time, when it's nice out, the older children play outside, which is wonderful because we don't have a very large house, and so that's a great way to keep the noise outside and not disturb little Benji as he sleeps. And so today, the kids are playing a little baseball game. This is a benefit of having a large family and a lot of siblings, is that there's always enough people to enjoy a game like this. So they've really been enjoying baseball and football lately. They all play together. These warm days have been so wonderful. It's making me so excited for summer. I love seeing my children getting outside, burning off their energy, getting some vitamin D from the sun. So this has me really looking forward to the coming months. And while the children are finishing up playing outside, my canning is all done. So I'm just pulling that out of the canner, and my granola also finished up. So once that work is done, this is kind of free time for me. I typically, while the baby is still napping, will get on my phone and do a little work on social media. I might get on Instagram and answer some messages or do some posting, maybe answer some YouTube comments and things, and that is what I do during that time. All of my jars sealed, so that was wonderful. Thought I'd also show you what I'm up to with my freeze dryer this week. I have some empty trays, which means I need to get my freeze dryer going. I'm going to clear out the fridge of leftovers. I have some leftover apple oatmeal, and I also have some leftover blueberry coconut oatmeal. Those will go on one tray together. This is just some leftover ham and onion kind of soup mix, I guess. I think it was ham steaks. And then this was some freeze-dried bone broth. I had already run it through and processed it, but I didn't trust that it was 100% dry. It still felt a little sticky to me, and so I wanted to run that through one more time. And then I'm also going to experiment with dates because someone suggested that that's a great way I could use these up before they go bad. So we're going to try it and see how it goes. And here were my results. Of course, the oatmeal turned out great. I always have great results freeze-drying oatmeal. It's actually a great treat just eaten raw, kind of like a granola bar. Now, the dates turned out hard as a rock. There is no way I could blend these down into a powder. They are literally like a rock if I tap them on the metal. So I'm thinking I'm going to need to freeze-dry these in a different way to get the result that I want, and I'll explain what I'm going to do with that here in a little bit. Now, running my broth through the freeze dryer again turned out wonderfully. Of course, now it's dry enough and I can bag that up and use it. And then this ham and onion base, I had added some extra broth on top of it, but this will just be used as a soup base in the future. So I'll just put that in some Mylar and we will definitely use that up. Speaking of Mylar, this is what I'm talking about. These are a special bag that you can use. You seal them up, and I'll show you how you do that in a second. But if you seal your food in Mylar with an oxygen absorber, this will keep in storage for 20-25 years. So it's great for your long-term food storage. So all I do is I take my freeze-dried food and kind of portion it out into the amount I want, toss an oxygen absorber in there, and then I have this machine back here called an impulse sealer. It's just kind of like a hot iron, and you just press it down and that will seal the top of it. And then there is on these bags a little tear off strip right above where you seal it, right below where you seal it, and then you can tear it off and open the bag when you want to use it. So super easy to do. The impulse sealer comes with your freeze dryer if you order from Harvest Right. There's more info in the description if you want to learn more about my freeze dryer. Okay, so let's talk about these dates. My goal with these was to turn them into like a date sugar. But I'm thinking what I'm going to need to do in the future is puree my dates into a paste and then spread the paste out on the freeze dryer trays. And then that will blend down into a powder more easily. So what I'm going to do with these, since they're hard as a rock now, these are just going to go directly into jars. And when I want a whole date for a meal, I can rehydrate these and use them just like they would be fresh. So they won't be wasted. These will just sit on the pantry shelves, and we'll eventually use these after we run out of the ones in the fridge. Let me show you what this broth is all about. You're probably confused. So why would I freeze dry broth instead of just canning it? Well, I'm going to add a little water and show you the difference. As you know, you might have a really gelatinous broth, but when you go to can it, the heat of the pressure canner tends to kill the gelatin, and you end up with a runnier broth. And that gelatin is actually where a lot of the health benefit is in your broth. That gelatin is what's good for your gut, and it's great for your bones and your skin and everything else. And so freeze drying broth is a great way to preserve the gelatin. Since there is no heating that's done to it in order to preserve it, the gelatin stays intact. And so I used cold water to rehydrate this. If you used a hotter water, it would definitely, it wouldn't be as clumpy, but I was just doing this quickly to show you. So as you can see, my broth stays nice and thick as I rehydrate it. And if I were to put this in the fridge for a little bit, this would end up gelling back up with the gelatin just like it would be if you made a fresh batch of broth and put it in the fridge. You know, you get that gelatinous, jiggly kind of jello texture. So let me put this in the fridge and I'll take it out a little later and show you what that looks like. All right, guys, so here you go. As you can see, if I spoon it out, it's thick like jello. So freeze drying preserves that gelatin. It gives you a healthier product than a canned broth. And as you know, I do can broth because it's super convenient to have it shelf stable and already rehydrated for you and everything. But that's a convenience food. If I want broth for the health benefit, freeze drying is definitely the way to go. And so that's what we will be doing in the future. While I was working in the kitchen, Adam had gotten home, and it looks like he's taking some boxes here and making them toys for the kids. Go figure, they have an entire room full of toys to play with, but they see an unused box, and don't they always want to turn it into something to play with? So I love the creativity. These boxes have lasted almost a week in our house, and they are still playing with them. And the great thing is, when they are done with them, they can just go into our wood stove as kindling for the fire. So you gotta love this. And they've just been using their little action figure guys and playing with them all week. And I think they've even decorated them and colored them. So lots of fun to be had with a box when you're a little child. I think one of the best parts of parenting and having more than one child is watching your older children and younger children interact. And I love it when my big boys are willing to get down and play with my little boys and get on their level. And I think secretly sometimes they enjoy it. All right, let's talk about our school days. So I mentioned what we do on a project day. Here's what a typical school day looks like. So from the hours of 9 to 10, the kids kind of work on their own stuff. Today, David's working on baking some pastries. He's doing some homemade Pop-Tarts. And the rest of the children are kind of playing and getting ready for the day. I spend the hour of 9 to 10 kind of straightening up the house. As a homeschool mom, I have a really hard time functioning and focusing on teaching the lessons when my environment is really chaotic. So this time from 9 to 10 gives me a chance to clean up the toys downstairs and to do any planning and organizing I need to do for the lessons that day. So this room here in the front of our house is kind of our playroom slash homeschool room. We have our floor table that used to be kind of in the dining room in the wood stove room. We moved it into this room, and this is what the kids sit at to do some of their homeschool work. We have our wipe erase board in here. The bookshelves are on a wall that you can't see, and this is kind of where we store everything that we use for school. And so I'm just going through everything for the day, and I'm finding the book that I'm going to be using for my lessons, and then I'm going to have Gabriel make the copies I need in order to complete those lessons. And so the goal is by 10 o'clock, I have everything ready. All the children are cleaned up and ready for the day, and we sit down at 10 o'clock and begin our lesson. So the first thing we do for school every day is do a group lesson, and it sort of changes every day what we're going to be doing. This is what we're doing today. It's understanding the U.S. Constitution. We're doing a unit study on the Constitution right now, all of the older 4 children together. So what we usually do is we sit down and we read together, we have discussions, I answer questions, and then we do some kind of project together relating to that topic. Every day of the week we pick a different subject, and then those subjects change throughout the year. We kind of do units, and when we finish that unit, we move on to something else. So right now the subjects that we do together are this Constitution unit. We do history lessons together once a week, And we also do a geography lesson together once a week. We are working through the continent of Asia right now, and every week we pick a different country and we talk all about it and learn about the customs and things like that. As you can see, while I'm reading with the older children, they grab some tea, we all just kind of sit down and hang out. The little boys are typically playing in the same room as us. If they start to get a little too noisy, we'll kind of kick them out of the room and move them to either the kitchen at their little table or out into the front room. They can play at that table. Sometimes if they're extremely loud, they might even go upstairs too. So we're done with our lesson, and now the children are working on their project. Today they have a worksheet that they need to complete. They are given the choice to either work together or work separately. Some of my children are kind of competitive, and they enjoy working alone to see how many of the questions they can get on their own. Some of my children prefer to work together. I currently have a 3rd grader, 5th grader, 7th grader, and 8th grader. And so we are working, this is a middle and upper level lesson that we're working on. So my 3rd grader here really enjoys working with my 8th grader. They can work together, and this really helps her get the answers since this is rather advanced material for her. Once again, little boys are playing while the big kids are working. My job during this time, besides answering questions, is just to keep the baby happy. And so he's sitting with me, we're reading a book, I'm enjoying a nice hot mug of tea, and it's just lovely. I love being a homeschool mom. These days are just the best. There's nothing better. After we finish group work, we begin working on our independent work. Every child has their own level of math and language arts and a couple other subjects that they need to do. I'm currently working with Levi. He is 5 years old and he wanted to start doing math. So he has started Saxon 1 math and I work with him. That takes about 15 minutes to do with him. The older children use a computer-based math program called Teaching Textbooks, and they can do their work independently. It gives the lesson to them. All of the work is on the computer and it's instantly graded, and this is a huge blessing. They can work at their own pace. We love it. I can't say enough good things about teaching textbooks. If you're a busy mom with kids in lots of different levels, it's a huge time saver. So I highly recommend checking it out. David's waiting for his turn to use the computer and finishing up his delicious Pop-Tarts that he made. In the meantime, he wants to be a baker when he grows up, so baking is an important part of his schooling. Levi, we had in speech therapy in 2021, but we found it to be a really big waste of time because the hospital was requiring masks for the therapists and he couldn't see her face, and it was extremely frustrating. I feel like speech therapy really requires the child to see your mouth and what it's doing, and he just wasn't progressing. So I just took note of what the speech therapist, the tools that she was using with him, and I purchased them. And then once a week, I sit down with him and we work. And you know what? He's making great progress with these cards. And his problem is fronting. He confuses his K and his G sounds. He confuses them with like the D and the T sounds. So we just work on differentiating between those sounds, and he makes progress and he's doing great. The goal then is for everybody to finish up their independent work by lunchtime. Some of the big kids still have more work to do that they finish up during naps, but the rest of the family is usually done by lunch. And we're going to save those Pop-Tarts for dessert tonight. We'll eat something else for lunch. Okay, so I don't know if you guys noticed early on when we were doing our chores, but we had these big buckets of just scraps, and these came from a local smoothie shop. Adam goes to it frequently, and I met him there one time and noticed that they were giving away, or they were throwing all of their scraps from the juicer into the trash. And so I asked them if we brought in buckets, could we have your scraps to use? And they were so excited to give them to us. They said that they had a man that used to take them for his compost, but he moved away. And so they were wanting someone to take them. So it never hurts to ask. We just asked, and we give them these 2 5-gallon buckets, and we pick them up when they're full. And it's free chicken food for our chickens about 2 or 3 times a week. So this is a huge blessing. Lots of wonderful veggies and fruits in there, and they really enjoy it. Oh my goodness, the worst part about spring is the mud. Can you see how muddy it is in there in the chicken run? I need to lay down some straw for them, but oh, it looks like a mud farm right now everywhere as all the snow has melted, and then we got a little rain after that, and it's just you sink into your ankles as you walk through in the where the grass used to be. It's just all torn up and muddy. Let's talk about water glassed eggs now. Okay, you guys know I water glassed about 40 dozen eggs for the winter, and we just used up the last ones this week, just in time for my hens to take over, and they're giving us about a dozen to a dozen and a half eggs a day. So the timing was perfect, and 40 dozen eggs worked great for us. But I want to use the rest of these up to experiment on hard boiling water glassed eggs. Some people told me it was possible. I was kind of skeptical, and so I'm going to try it, and I will show you guys the results of my experiment. So I'm going to use my Dash egg cooker here to steam them. And the thing that scares me is that you can't tell whether or not they're good or bad from the outside, but we're just going to assume these eggs are all good. And spoiler alert, they did end up not being rotten. But what did happen is that they all exploded. And so what I have since learned is that you can't hard boil or steam water glassed eggs because the process of water glassing actually seals the eggshell and makes it kind of harder. And so as the egg cooks and expands inside the eggshell doesn't give in the same way or something like that. And so it cracks and the egg explodes everywhere. So that's a bummer. In the future, we will not be doing this again. We will use our water glassed eggs simply for baking and for scrambled eggs, and we will save the fresh eggs to hard boil. So I'm still going to peel these up and not waste them. None of them were rotten or anything. They just all exploded. So we can still use these. I will make an egg salad out of them. I will chop them all up. As you can see, they're perfectly fine and they smell good and tasted great, but they just were ugly as could be. So they would not be good for other purposes other than just dicing up to use on salads or to make an egg salad. Hard-boiled eggs were something I was definitely missing through the winter when we weren't getting enough fresh eggs from our chickens. I was kind of hoping this would work out so that I could use these next year for hard-boiled eggs, but I guess we're just going to have to go without hard-boiled eggs during the winter, and we will deal with that. So now you guys know the results of that experiment. And now let's talk about our puppy. I'm sure you guys have seen this little guy. This is Harry. So we couldn't agree on which puppy out of our litter that we wanted to keep. So we just decided to keep whoever was left after buyers chose. And all of our pups went to their new homes as of about a week and a half ago. Harry here is 12 weeks old. He's a male. He is so precious. We love him so much. And the kids are just really enjoying the weather being nice and we can be outside playing with little Harry now. So at 12 weeks old, he's about 40 pounds. He's on track to probably be not as big as his dad, Tom. He doesn't look like he's going to be as big as his dad, but he's definitely going to be bigger than his mom, Leela. So got my 3 little boys out here marching outside. Not quite sure what they're doing, but they look like they're having fun, so we're just letting them do it. It's fun that little Benji can finally keep up with his big brothers. He's going to have a lot of fun this summer, I think, running around with his big brothers. Another day of school. As I mentioned, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are school days, so we're just all hitting the books and getting work done. Everybody loves learning together and working together. I love to see the cooperation amongst the siblings. And it's a great life. I love homeschooling. It's a blessing to be able to teach my children and to be with them as they learn. So now it's time to give you a weekly garden update. So I have to plant something every week. So I decided this week I was going to plant some chives, and I'm going to do it in an old grape container. They work great because they have drainage holes already in the bottom of them. So here's what I'm going to plant. I'm going to do garlic chives. We already have a lot of chives already out in our garden. They are a perennial, so they come back every year. But what I love about chives is that they are typically one of the first flowers that bloom in my garden. And the chives that I have out there are beautiful purple flowers. The bees love them, so I feel like you can never really have enough chives, and we love to eat them. So I'm just going to plant some more. I've never tried them by seed or from seed. I've always gotten starts from friends who needed to divide their chives. So we're going to do it from seed this year. And this year, I want to try to plant them in a pot. And I'm going to follow the tip on the back of the seed packet. And I'm going to bring these in for the winter and put them in my windowsill. And hopefully then we can have fresh chives next winter. So just kind of sprinkling the seeds into my soil here. I'm definitely when it comes to onions and chives, I don't measure them out really. I just kind of sprinkle and cover with dirt, and then later on I'll end up separating them out. They separate pretty easily without disturbing the roots, and then you can replant them as you would like. Okay, and then I always, after I'm done planting, I just need to make sure I label everything properly because I will forget which item is planted in here. So just labeling the top and then getting it out with the other starts. Going to thoroughly water it, and then I'll give you guys an update on how everything's doing. I haven't planted a lot yet. As I mentioned in the last video, we have just done our peppers. We've planted asparagus right here. We've planted some spinach. There's the chives that I just planted. And then as I mentioned, here are the peppers, and then we've also done some onions. So you can see what's sprouted. And then I think last week I mentioned that I was having problems with germination with my banana peppers, and I thought I was going to need to replant them, but they surprised me this week. And nearly 2 weeks after the other ones planted, some of them started to sprout up. Now I still have a few holes there, but as you can see, they're still sprouting up there. So I'm so glad I didn't give up on these, even though the other ones already have true leaves and they're growing well. I am not going to give up on the ones that haven't germinated yet. And you see a lot of my holes have 2 plants in them. I always do 2 seeds in case I have poor germination. And then as I up pot these peppers, I'll just separate them out and I get double the number of plants. So, and then when I up pot them, I use these recycled solo cups. I am that crazy lady who rescues these cups from family gatherings. They're not something I typically buy, but this cup was rescued 4 years ago. You can see that I've used this 4 other times. I've crossed off names and planted things in it, so it's going to be the 5th year. I just put a hole in the bottom of it, fill it with soil, and replant my peppers and tomatoes in these. So a great way to get free things to plant in is be the crazy lady that steals the cups from the trash at your family gathering. Your family will think you're probably strange, but you're saving something from the trash, and you know what? It works. There we go. Still got little babies popping up. I'm so excited to see this green. As you can see, here are my onions, and some of the hazards of letting children plant for you is they tend to sprinkle the seeds, and we kind of have more onions per cell than I would like, but we can just thin these out later on. But they're growing great. This is the first year I'm trying onion by seed. I usually do them by set, and I haven't been really excited about the results. So we're going to try from seed and see if we get better results this year. A set is a second-year onion, so it typically doesn't get as big as a seed, which would be a first-year onion. So everybody's telling me to try it by seed, and I'll enjoy the results. I had questions last week about my seed starting setup here. I bought this off of Amazon probably 5 years ago. It's linked in the description. Down here you can see all of my water jugs and milk jugs that I need to be doing my winter sowing in. I have a video on winter sowing that I did last year, but I need to get those outside. This setup, as I said, is from Amazon. I really enjoy it because it's convenient. The children often help me with watering and moving the lights, and so with this setup you can simply just press a button here and lower and raise the lights. So I'm very happy with this. It was kind of a pricey purchase at the time. I got it on sale when I got it, so look for it off season. You might be able to get it on sale, but it works great, and it's on wheels, which is very convenient. We can kind of move it around the house, and that's what works for us. All right, so let's see how our sap has been flowing here. We've been getting about 2.5 gallons a day from this one tree here. So all he does is he comes out and he just switches the jug out with an empty one, and then we are collecting the sap and putting it into our overflow fridge in our garage. That fridge normally has bushels of apples in it, but we've eaten through most of them, so there now is enough room to store this sap. Now, you don't have to boil sap down into syrup. There are other ways to enjoy it. Sap can just be drank like you would water. It's kind of sweet. It has a really kind of a mild hint of a maple flavor, but it's full of minerals that are really healthy for you. So it's just kind of like a tasty, sweet water drink. It gives you a little vitamins and minerals, and so sometimes we just enjoy it that way. But as you can see, there's the sap. We'll get it in the fridge, and if we don't have time this week to boil it down after we collect the rest this week, we'll just enjoy drinking it. You can even freeze it to enjoy later. So thankful for my helper here, taking it to the garage. All right, guys, so that's kind of just an overview of what we were up to this week. I hope you liked kind of seeing a peek into how we structure our week and our days. I hope to do more videos kind of during the pantry challenge, showing you meals that we cooked. But to be honest, I just needed a week's break from documenting our meals. So I like this structure of just kind of doing an overview of what we're doing during the week. I'd like to share a little bit of homeschooling, a little bit of gardening, a little bit of kitchen work, everything that we're doing around the homestead. And hopefully you guys will enjoy this format because it's something manageable for me. All right, guys, and with that said, I hope you have a blessed week. Look forward to sharing with you next week, and I'll see you later, friends. Bye.